Welcome, everyone. The great Dave Rubin joins us today. You can find him on Rumble at Rubin Report, X, Rubin Report. Let's see, where else? Locals, don't forget him on Locals as well. And his book, Don't Burn This Book. The burning of the book has multiple layers of meaning now. There it is, in the sense that books are being burned electronically all over the place, all the last 4 years, certainly. And President Biden, in his outgoing speech last night, emphasized the importance of burning books, essentially what he was saying. And burning has a new meaning in this part of the world. And Dave Rubin's house is now worth more because of Gavin Newsom's extraordinary leadership skills. We'll talk about that and more right after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
We are going to get right to it today. Let's bring in the one and only Dave Rubin from the Rubin Report. Dave, welcome. I trust all is well in the great state of Florida.
All is well in the great state of Florida. And yes, it is true. My house is worth more today than even a week ago because everybody from your fair state of California, if they weren't all coming here already, they're really all coming here now. I mean, joking aside, I spoke to my real estate agent just yesterday, and he said he's basically been on a 72-hour nonstop phone binge because everybody is now trying to get out. They've just had it. You can't blame them. And, you know, Drew, my second book was Don't Burn This Country. The first one was Don't Burn This Book. The second one was Don't Burn This Country, which I'm now realizing I didn't mean it literally, everybody. It was supposed to be a metaphor, and yet here we are.
I want to jump off that to talk about President Biden's speech last night. I don't know if you heard it.
I did.
He whisper yelled through the entire speech. There's a name for that medically. Parkinsonian patients get this hypophonia. He had no nuance. He had a little more facial expression than usual, which suggests he's on some medication to help him with that, which he should be. I mean, he should be. He's got severe Parkinsonism. But it was astonishing to hear these same things, these essentially colorblind, issues like essentially electronically burning books.
Right. Well, there's two things going on there, because one is the mental and physical condition of Joe Biden, which at this point there's no point in belaboring. And I've been saying for a while on my show, I sense we're going to probably see him max 2 or 3 more times after he steps out of the Oval Office, and then there'll be a letter written, sort of like they did with Reagan at the end, and then that will be it. They will say, okay, he did have some stuff, we tried to deal with it, and then eventually more and more rumors will come out about that. But let's put that part aside because that's not really what's important. You're completely right. The tone, and again, putting aside his inability to emote properly and the way his the whispering with the yelling and all of those things, the tone of the speech was so tone deaf relative to where America is going right now. You know, the day after the election, what I said was, Joe Biden has an interesting opportunity because we have the 3+ months from the beginning of November to the middle of January, where we're at right now, where the president-elect hasn't taken office yet, and the outgoing president can really decide how he wants to angle it, how he wants to hand it off. How do you want to hand off the baton to the next guy? Do you want to do it in the most clunky possible ways so that he possibly drops the baton, or do you want to take the running start and hand it off to him beautifully and elegantly and give him a chance to do great things? Well, virtually everything Biden has done in the end, from the pardons to largely, I would say, mucking up this Israel-Hamas situation that only is happening, if it happens, because of Trump. virtually every piece of legislation and everything that he has tried to push through in the last 3 months has just been an extension of the last 4 years. So when he's up there and basically talking about censorship and he's suddenly concerned about an oligarchy and rich people taking over, it's like, dude, you just literally put the Medal of Freedom around George Soros' son's neck in honor of George, who wasn't there. I guess his health isn't great, but you put it around Alex Soros' neck, and now you're suddenly concerned about the oligarchy. It's just a real shame, because Joe Biden, if you remove the last, say, half decade or maybe even a decade, he was basically a moderate Democrat, and his legacy beyond the health stuff and the mental stuff, his legacy is that he ushered us he ushered in basically the endless woke nonsense that almost destroyed the country. And he had a little brief moment where he could have just handed it nicely to Trump and instead went this way.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it's not him, and it's the people around him that's been doing all this in the first place. Yeah, and the image that will remain always in my head was equally as bungled, was that speech he gave in front of essentially what looked like a World War II Nazi film in color with the red lights behind him.
Right,
it was just astonishing.
It was the Palpatine speech, yeah.
Yes, it was astonishing. How pathetic, how terrible. I mean, what did they think? But okay, so we moved on through that. One of the most viral moments I've ever had was on your show, where I said, I was in Florida, and I said, I don't know what's true anymore. I certainly can't trust anything in the media. And that is so clear to me now. It's not even a question. And last night was no exception to that. The news media jumped in and said, "Oh my God, genius. Oh, it's so emotional, so full of vim and vigor." I was like, "Oh my God, who are they?" And that was hard for me to watch too. But again, the media has really, it's over. There's nothing that goes on in the media that I think, oh, that's interesting. Nothing that is said that I believe that is being broadcast now.
Yeah, and I actually don't think you're being hyperbolic when you say that. If you were to turn on CNN for an hour, I actually believe this. It would be more congruent with the truth if you just reversed everything they said, would probably get you closer to what actually is happening rather than what they're presenting. It's unbelievable that they went this deep. And the funny thing is, we've discussed this before, I have always said, the American people, because we're a largely successful country, because we can do, we don't have sectarian strife, we don't have all the craziness that so much of the world has. We're distracted with a lot of things, and we have iPhones, and we have video games, and whatever else people want to do. The media, all they had to do was not be abjectly horrible. They didn't need to be 100% horrible, and we would have swallowed it. Look how long we swallowed it. Look, Drew, you're one of the brightest guys I know. I admired you way before I even knew you as a human. The fact that it took you as long as it did to wake up, and that you're willing to talk about it, is why it went so viral, right? People appreciate that kind of mea culpa or moment, that they realize that someone realizes, boy, maybe I didn't see things with the clearest glasses or whatever it might be. But all they had to do was not be completely horrible, and yet they still remain completely horrible. I saw some of the same videos you're talking about. You watched the Biden speech, and then for them to be like, oh, and it was one of his greatest speeches, and it's the same thing when he stepped down. The same people who lied and said he was perfectly fine cognitively, then he steps down, and then he's such a hero for doing it. It's so wonderful he did it. Well, why weren't you guys talking about it 2 days ago?
It's interesting. As you're talking, I'm reliving my evolution with print media in particular, where I really thought the most egregious transgressions would remain. But lo and behold, I was wrong about that too. But first, I stopped doing print interviews because they were always so distorted and so attacking and so completely off base in terms of the so-called Gell-Mann amnesia. I learned that very, very early and often. And I used to read the LA Times and the New York Times every day, and I loved it. Particularly New York Times. I loved reading the New York Times. I noticed I had to stop my subscription to the LA Times because it was unreadable and distorted, and that was where some of the most egregious distortions of my own stories showed up. So I thought, okay, I can't trust them with anything. And then the New York Times took flight as well. And that was really surprising to me. And then they went down the toilet during COVID and took positions and said things they have no business even being a part of, let alone taking a strong position about it. And that was it for me. It was over. And then, lo and behold, the cable news followed suit.
You know, it's interesting the way you describe your feelings about the New York Times, because I'm from New York. I know many people, you know, New York Upper West Side people who, to them, the New York Times is the Bible. And I think partly what happened here is that people, it's very hard, you know this, and COVID is what woke up so many people around this notion, but it's very hard to get people to suddenly be like, boy, you know, I've been reading the New York Times for 30 years, and I enjoy reading it, and I have my cup of coffee when I'm reading it, and my dog's in my lap, and it's like the New York Times commercial that they used to play. And after 30 years, I did notice something about a year ago, but then there was something about 10 months ago, and then it was 6 months ago, 5 months ago, and now it's happening every day. And to get people to fully get to the end of the road on that. I mean, keep in mind, the New York Times was too woke and radical for Barry Weiss 5 years ago. Barry Weiss is like the most moderate, I would say, moderate milquetoast liberal that you can come up with. Not Republican. She's absolutely not a Republican. And it was too radical for her 5 years ago. So anything that comes out from the New York Times at this point, and you know, the other part, of course, Drew, you know this, is that for guys like us that occasionally they write about us, right? So I read things about myself that are completely not what I said or framed in the worst possible light, or they literally removed the word not or something like that. So once you see them do it about you yourself, suddenly you go, well, I'm guessing they're doing this to other people too.
That's the Gell-Mann amnesia. Are you familiar with that concept?
Yeah, no, we've discussed it before,
Yeah, that's what that is. But my bottom, I hit bottom with them when the New York editorial board had a position and mandated public health policy. Who the F are you to even, what the fuck? What? In what world does a group of editorial journalists mandate health policy? That's disgusting. You know, speaking of disgusting, I don't know if you saw that thing that rolled in on our show today where Paul Alexander is talking about his experience at the State Department, where they thought he was part of their group. There's the Gell-Mann amnesia definition. And he was pulled aside and they were like, oh, you know, that the elected officials don't do shit here. We run the government. We're the bureaucrats. We know what they, did you see that piece? When I hear, that was a year and a half ago. It was a year and a half ago, and I went, oh my God, this is disgusting. That was where another bottom for me. I'm like, are you kidding? Elected officials, the will of the people is ignored by our government? That's, oh my God, we have an emergency here.
Well, look, if what should start happening in 4 days actually happens, a lot of that is going to change. The previous guest that you had on, sorry, I only jumped on in the last second, so I'm not sure who it was, but he said basically so he was talking about how that Donald Trump 2.0 is going to be a lot smarter and know what who the proper enemies are and everything else. That's a lot of people are saying that sort of thing. I really believe it. I happened to be at an event just a few days ago with Bobby Kennedy. It was a private event, but I think I can share one little thing, which is he said something that was so inspiring. It was so great to hear. He said, they have to staff at HHS, I think about 2,500 people, HHS alone. That's a lot of people. And he said that the amount of people that he's getting calls and emails from who are industry leaders, who are millionaires, billionaires, experts, engineers. He went through like the laundry list of the types of people that you would want to work in the government. And they're all saying the same thing to him. He said, I want to serve my country. And that is what is shifted here. If you would have said 5 years ago that Donald Trump's going to be president again, Bobby Kennedy's going to be on the same side of him, and together they're going to be hacking away at what we now call the deep state. Nobody would have believed you. But this is the generational chance, right? If we're going to ever fix any of this so that those middle management bureaucrats don't have all of the power, this is it. And I don't know how long of a runway Trump has to do it, but I think they're going to do a lot very quickly, and then we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I ran into Bobby last week and I told him, please, whatever I can do. I'm so thrilled that you're in there and whatever I can do to support you. And he must be hearing that a lot, I guess. He's very kindly sent me an email back, and he's a great guy. And look, his expertise is taking apart big operations and looking at adulterating influences. The right guy for this job. Perfect.
He is the right guy for the job. And, I've been watching a lot of old speeches of his uncle, JFK, obviously. And, so much of what JFK talked about all the time, I mean, what's the most famous line? Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I think that that's reflective in the quote that I just mentioned with Bobby. It's like people are suddenly like, oh, this country has been pretty damn good to me. And I've done an awful lot and I've become successful. What can I do now to help this thing? So that's why I think it's a once in a generation moment here. I mean, I don't remember any time in my lifetime, you've got a couple years on me, but I don't remember any time in my lifetime where so many people, I mean, just look at the type of people that are involved here. You could go, David Sachs, who is a billionaire, who's running a gajillion businesses, who has no need to suddenly say, I will be the crypto AI czar, but that is the horizon. We're painting a new horizon as it pertains to money and transactions. So he's saying, I'll get involved. I assure you that Elon Musk, putting aside Twitter, has plenty of other things to do than deal with government inefficiency. Vivek could have his job of choice, or he could move to Bora Bora if he wanted. And that's just a few of the people. There's many people on the lower level that aren't as well known that are doing the same thing.
Dave just tilted a little hand at me about David Sachs because I sat across from David Sachs at a dinner, one of Dave's famous soirees, where we had Adam Carolla and David Sachs sharing a baked potato together because neither of them like waste.
You take your friends out to dinner, private room, very illustrious group of guests, our friend Dennis Prager and Larry Elder, who should be governor of California right now, and Sage Steele is there. It was like my great crew of friends. And dinner's on me, guys, get whatever you want. And somehow Carolla turns to a billionaire and says, would you like to share the potato? And they did. And they did. And I'm sure that's the only time he's ever shared a potato. And if the economy works out, he will never have to share a potato again.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
That was what Biden's economy did to us. We had a billionaire sharing the potato with a millionaire. Carolla's doing okay.
The great potato famine of 2024. So did you see that Trump is suggesting Vivek for the Senate seat, J.D. Vance Senate seat in Ohio?
I did see that. I saw it this morning. Does not surprise me. There's been something interesting going on with Vivek because after that H-1B visa thing, which happened, right around Christmas, I think he's only tweeted twice since then. So I don't know if there was some internal... I don't know if there was some internal fighting or there was a smackdown or maybe they decided let Elon take Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, and you do something else. But look, Vivek, I had my frustrations with him during the primary process because, as you know, I was a DeSantis guy and I thought there were some unfair gripes there. That's just playing politics. It's all good. I've sat down with him in this very room since then and we're good. I think he would make a fine senator. I mean, I think the guy is able to communicate the issues that exist in an extremely competent and effective way. I think his youth and his experience and everything else, it just adds to, if you want people in the Senate that not only understand the issues right, but can communicate them properly. It's one of the reasons that I'm so bullish on Pete Hegseth. It's because not only does he have a good pedigree, but as a TV presenter for the last 10 plus years, the guy knows how to communicate this stuff. And look at the people that we have had to put up with. Not only the incompetent people, but people who can't explain anything. You see what happens with Karine Jean-Pierre when she doesn't have notes in front of her, or Joe Biden, even with the teleprompter. So I'm ready for not only people that are qualified, but people that can actually level with the American people and speak to them off script. I mean, look, that's what's driven Trump this entire time. What has it been? Has it been pure policy? No, it's been his ability to say what he's thinking. And whether you agree with it all or not, you know that he believes it. And that was a hell of a lot better than the alternative.
How about Pam Bondi? My God, what a performance in the face of this screeching.
So I did not see much of that this morning because I was doing my live show, so I can't comment on the specifics of what happened in the hearing on that one specifically. But happy to hear your thoughts.
It's just something to behold. It's just behold. This is a brilliant woman who is at the peak of her prowess, and good for her.
I'm glad to hear that.
I want to talk. Oh no, you'll be blown away. I want to talk about my battle with YouTube. I want to talk about Zuckerman's shift. But when we get back, well, maybe just before we go to break, I want to talk about Newsom. And let me just say, you mentioned that a lot of people are being called to duty and that Larry Elder should have been the governor, which is absolutely true. When Governor Newsom was recalled during the pandemic, a friend of mine, Kat Timpf, you know her from Gutfeld.
Oh yeah,
her husband is a good friend, and he's a West Point graduate, Army Ranger, and he started getting under my skin, saying, "Your country needs you. Your country needs you. It's your time to serve." And that stuff gets into your skin. And I thought about running for governor. I actually went so far as to talk to former Governor
I know you did.
Schwarzenegger, which was a delight. But anyway, I backed down from that. I needed some treatment of some stuff I was having with medically. It was no big deal. But the point is, Newsom is still with us. The state is... The one thing this city does not have is governance. Our roads don't work, our trash doesn't work, our water and power doesn't work, our poor firemen can't do their job, our police is down. The homeless and criminals are, it's like something out of the Joker, the original Joker and Batman series. And then the government, who are just doing this horrible job, are blaming one another, everybody else, anything but me. It's astonishing to see. What are your thoughts from a distance there? And you've been here for many years as well.
Well, the only thing that I disagree with is that it's astonishing to see, because I think this is exactly what Gavin Newsom has wrought for his entire career. Let's not forget, this was a guy, there's a video that anyone can see, you've probably played it on the show, back in 2008 as mayor of San Francisco, saying that he had a 10-year plan to end the homelessness in San Francisco. And we now know that San Francisco is basically ground zero for the homeless epidemic in the entire country. Everything that he touches turns to shit, except his bank account and his properties and investments and things of that nature. His Plump Jack Winery is doing just fine over there in Northern Cali, and I'm sure he's given a nice tip when he goes to French Laundry. But look, I left California obviously because of COVID, but it wasn't just COVID, right? There were a series of other things. COVID was finally the last punch in the gut to make it happen. But it was also the criminality. It was also, you've been to my place. I lived in the hills. Actually, the house that I sold was evacuated a couple days ago. It is okay. But I lived in a really nice area in the hills that should have been safe and everything else. But there were homeless encampments everywhere. These nonsensical things where the DA George Gascon, who no longer is the DA, thank God, but he was the DA that ruined San Francisco. So then he gets over to LA, and then you're allowed to trespass on people's houses. And then if you resist arrest, they won't arrest you. So that means someone could put up a tent in my front lawn, and then if I try to get them off, not only could I be prosecuted, but then they could attack the cop and still not be prosecuted. So none of this is a surprise to me. So is it surprising they didn't clear the brush properly, or that perhaps the reservoirs weren't filled properly, or a series of other things? Of course not, because once you bring in diversity, DIE, diversity, equity, inclusion, into any of these institutions, there's only finite time, there's only finite resources, their eye is off the ball, and bad things are going to happen. So look, I don't think Gavin Newsom, if he has a heart, I don't even know. He's a lizard. But lizards have hearts. He's just cold-blooded. I don't think he wanted the Palisades to burn down. But at some point, the buck stops with somebody, and you're completely right. Every interview that I have seen him have, amidst rubble behind him, we'll find out who did that. I'll talk to that. That's up to local authorities. We'll see about that. I'm trying to get help now. And it's like, dude, who is the governor? You keep thinking it's like a comedy, like he's going to be like, oh, no, I'm on the phone with the governor. Wait a minute, I'm the governor. So the guy is absolutely terrible. He should have been recalled years ago. The fact that he not only didn't get recalled, but then won re-election since. Look, I have sympathy for every single person, even if you voted for him and you voted all these dingbat Democrats in. But at some point, this is we talked about the kind of punch in the gut earlier, and you woke up. It took you a long time to wake up to certain things with the medical community and journalism. Yeah. When your house is burnt down and the governor's saying he doesn't know who's in charge, maybe that's it.
Yeah. There's so many ridiculous arguments going on. It wouldn't have made any difference. Like, that's not the point. You don't hear complaints about Pasadena, because guess what? Everything functions here. We're like a separate country. Our own water and power, our own fire, our own everything. And they did their job. They did the best they could. It was an act of nature. It was a disaster. We understand that. But it wasn't amplified by failures of the Pasadena city.
Of course, and you know I can relate anything back to Florida, but I would just say this. Look, acts of God are going to happen. There's going to be fires. And even though some of these clearly were arson and whatever, but there's going to be fires in areas that are dry. There's going to be hurricanes. There's going to be earthquakes, etc. The difference here is that I haven't heard anyone, and I mean this literally, I haven't heard anyone say, boy, California and SoCal and LA, they really were prepared properly. I haven't heard anyone say, boy, they really did do a great job with the brush, and this just was overwhelming, even though the winds were quite strong and all that stuff. The difference is in a place with proper governance like Florida, what we know is we've been hit by several category 4 and 5 hurricanes, several of them in the last just 3 years that I've been here. And even though there often is devastation, as the acts of God are going to cause, we know we have proper governance because the linemen are out there immediately. The engineers are out there immediately. DeSantis met with the Sanibel Causeway people and said, he didn't say, what can I do to help you? He said, what can I do to get out of your way so you guys can do the job? Think how fundamentally different that is. Newsom, it's all about, I'm going to get you money and me. DeSantis literally said, what can I do to get out of your way? Meaning, let me cut red tape so that the engineers and the electricians and the contractors can build the road. And they literally rebuilt the 3-mile Sanibel Causeway in a matter of weeks, when we know in California, it would be like the railroad, how much does that cost you? How many billion? And with 0 track laid?
$100 billion over budget.
How's that possible?
Bakersfield and Modesto are the source and the destination. Why? Who's going between Bakersfield and Modesto? And they haven't laid down one track. And I want to lean into their climate change stuff. Like, okay, it's climate change. Then you really need to prepare. Then we need to be extra prepared. And not only that, if it's climate change, the CO2 created by forest fires, just from 2020 to 24, not including this most recent fire, 2020 to 24, the CO2 put into the environment from the fires for those 4 years undid all the CO2 benefits of the previous 20 years times 2. So shouldn't the fires be your very first priority?
I quoted you several times on the show this week, and I love this concept because it's such a great way of explaining how thin their ideas are. You are completely right. If you believe in climate change, so I'm a skeptic, let's say, but let's say you are
lean into it.
Let's say you're all about it, 100%, right? This is your belief system. Well, if you are that, it's been a Democrat president for 4 years. It's a Democrat governor in California. It's a Democrat mayor in Los Angeles. It's a Democrat supermajority in the state legislature. So what did you people do? And if your argument is, and again, I haven't heard anyone make this argument, but if the argument is, we actually did everything. We did everything right with the reservoirs. We did everything right with the brush. No, we didn't divert dams so that we could get smelt going and all the other stuff. Well, that didn't work either. So you still got to go. How about that?
We'll take a little break on that note and be back with the great Dave Rubin right after this. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15. Pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
That's brilliant. And thank you, Drew. Where's Dr. Drew? Where is he? Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew.
Trying to be rational ready. I'm just reaching for my field kit. I was so grateful to have this from TWC during the fires. We reached into it for a number of different situations. You must also consider the Contagion emergency kit. You can save 10% by shopping at drdrew.com/TWC. This kit TWC creates 7 different kits, each customized for a variety of needs. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a look at each of them and consider the string of disasters lately. You're going to think about what it would be like to be ready. During COVID, we learned that we can't trust our system and our government to allow us to take care of our family medically. During the fires, we learned that we can't trust them to keep us safe. Now, it seems like the same experts that brought us the bird flu concerns, the avian flu concerns, are the same guys that are freaking out about COVID. Now they're freaking out about the bird flu. Here's the deal. There's concern about the bird flu being passed through with gain of function. So if it becomes an issue, that's where it came from. Contagion kit is ready for that. It contains ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and Tamiflu, which is shown to have some activity against the bird flu virus, as well as budesonide, nebulizer for airway inflammation and reducing viral replication. Go to doctor.com/TWC for 10% off your purchase. It is TWC. We are grateful to be a part of them to be a part of our lives. You should be too. Dave Rubin with us, the Rubin Report on all the platforms. Am I bleeding here? I think I am, maybe. Dave,
Drew, take a moment if you're bleeding. You have the kit next to you. I'm sure there's something in the kit that will deal with the blood.
But go ahead.
Well, I'm a big fan of TWC. I love the Contagion kit. They've been very good to us on the program. We do have a few of them here in the house. But it's interesting. You're in California where you literally have to keep the kit within arm's reach because that's how crazy it is. Yeah. So then I was quickly, while you were reading that, I was looking around. What do I have in arm's reach? I've got 2 things. I've got a coaster for my coffee. That'll keep me safe. And I've got a little bit of tape here. That's it, because that's what life's like in Florida. And I could MacGyver the hell out of this thing and save a lot of people. But you've got your Contagion kit.
I've got the big boy. I've got the field kit, and we open it and get into it for stuff because we have need for it here. And the pharmacies weren't open. The physicians certainly weren't. We have
burned down.
Yeah, a lot of them burned down. We did have some burned down. Contagion kit is in case the bird flu becomes an issue, which again, I invented the term rationally ready. I was on somebody's radio program. I go, you know what? We need to be rationally ready, not irrational certitude about everything. Just be rationally ready, prepare yourself, and don't panic never makes things better. The fact that panic was induced by our public health officials was one of the most astonishing and egregious transgressions of COVID.
Absolutely. I love that phrase. I mean, rational readiness, I think, is what most of us have started to come around to because, 10 years ago, everybody was making fun of preppers, right? There were TV shows on TLC and whatever about preppers and, they're all nuts and they think the apocalypse is coming. And it's like, man, after 3 years of COVID, the preppers were looking pretty damn good when the ultra, crazy liberals of Pacific Palisades were going to try to get their, grass-fed Wagyu over at Whole Foods and they weren't allowed in. So...
Well, I know you're going to interview Adam tomorrow morning, and that's been his point. It's like, hey, you guys voted this stuff in. Palisades, Santa Monica, Venice, this is your government. You feel good about it now? You happy with that? A mayor that takes off in the middle of impending winds and fires, like that's governance to you guys? And then when requested for comment, the opposite of leadership is what they get. Think what a great position she was in. She could have just gone, you know what? I took my eye off the ball. I swear to God, that will never happen again. I should have never left. It's never happening. And we will take care of this. There will never be, under my watch, another fire like this in California, in this city. That's all she had to say. People need leaders. Leaders are good. I think our whole concept about toxic masculinity or something started eroding into our sense of leadership. Leaders are good. People need them.
Drew, the video a couple of days ago where Newsom is touring in the Palisades and this woman approaches him. I'm sure you guys played it.
Oh, yeah.
And he literally says, I'm on the phone with the president. And she says, can I talk to him? And then he goes, I have no cell service. The fact that his immediate inclination is to lie to this woman. She's with the rubble of her home. Her life has likely been destroyed or at least sidetracked for a couple of years right now. And his immediate thought is to lie to her. And the other interesting thing about the way he keeps kicking the can down the road, or he'll have to talk to the local authorities, or I didn't know about this or whatever, It's like, dude, if you were smart, even I get I don't think he's good, but if you were, people think he's slick, and it's like there's a difference between being slick, which I guess he's slick in a used car salesman sense, versus being smart for his own political ability to continue going forward. For that, if nothing else, why wouldn't right now he be like, boy, you know, we should have done things differently, and I'm looking into it. Like, I think all the people attacking him right now, yes, I would still be attacking him. You'd probably still be attacking him, and we can still talk about the inefficiencies. But it would give him a real force field if he would just take some responsibility for something. But the fact that his policies led to a lot of this, and then he still won't take responsibility, and he's literally on Twitter this morning claiming that someone that, I guess Trump called him Newsom, and someone in 7th grade used to call him that too, and he was the bully. And it's like, dude, don't make this about you right now.
Wow. Wow, it's crazy. Yeah. Do you think he has any hope in 28 after all this?
I pray to God not. I mean, look, everybody loves a comeback, and, you know, there are all these heroes' journeys. And I mean, just look at Trump. So many people hated Trump, and now they love Trump. So can anything happen in politics? Of course. But I can't be clearer about this, Drew. I think that Gavin Newsom is rotten to the core. He has done so much damage to what should be, really without exception, what should be the greatest state in the United States, the 5th largest economy in the world. Unbelievable beauty, the coast, mountains, skiing, beaches, it's all there. The industries that were there that are largely leaving now. There's so much goodness that he has eroded. And just go to San Francisco, anyone, if you haven't been there, go to San Francisco. The first time I was there about 15 years ago, it was the first time in my life that I had ever gotten to a city and within a day thought I could live here. That was before, that was sort of in the midst of Gavin Newsom, and then it all kind of crumbled after that. Everything he touches becomes a disaster. It's just, well, except his bank account. And again, I've heard Plump Jack is quite nice.
Yeah, I hear it's good too. Back to the woman assailing Newsom outside her home, where her kid's school had burned down and whatnot. She's an attorney. Yeah. And you talk to Adam about this tomorrow too, because have your guys make a note of this, because she says something extraordinary. If you keep watching the tape, she goes, why are there enough water in the fire hydrant? She goes, I'll put water in the fire hydrant. Will you put water in the fire hydrant? As though it's like a coffee maker where you just put water into the fire hydrant. And it was really something. But again, well, it's the desperation people are feeling. They're trying to make sense of things that make no sense. How could you have fire hydrants that don't work in a fire zone? Help me make sense of that, Governor. I'm on the phone. Sorry. Yeah.
Look, there's a video going around of 2018, Donald Trump standing in a forest with Gavin Newsom talking about why you have to clear brush and why you have to do controlled burns and all of these things. Now, look, I'm not telling you that if Donald Trump had been president for these 4 years, he could have forced Gavin Newsom to do anything. But why is this stuff somewhat predictable? As I said before, I did not leave because of fires, obviously. I left largely because of COVID. But I do also know that a few weeks before we left, we had already sold the house. We were on our way out. One night in Encino, there was ash coming down, which happens, once or twice a year. And I was on my roof with a hose. I didn't know what the hell to do, but I was like, I don't know, this is what happens. You get some leaves up here and one piece of ash comes down and next thing you know, your house is on fire. And it's like, the question is, do you trust the basic systems? And if you're in California and you still trust the basic systems, then I got a bridge to sell you.
Yeah, roads don't work. Cops are hamstrung, fire department underserved, water doesn't work, power doesn't work. It's just anything but govern. They do anything but govern. But I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about my battle with YouTube. I don't know if you've seen some of that online.
Yeah, I have.
Okay. All right, good. And the shift, really the reason we've had trouble with YouTube forever. They clearly are, their algorithm, what they think is misinformation or disinformation is bizarre. If you're a medical professional, it's frankly egregious. It's been that way all the way through COVID. They've lightened up on some of it, but most of it is still ridiculous. They don't have medical personnel making any decisions in there, and yet medical people are put upon with their algorithm and whatnot. There is how our video was taken down. It was me talking to an ER doctor. I don't even remember what we were talking about. It was something about probably vaccines, I imagine. And I don't I don't agree with her.
Vaccines harming children.
Was it during children? Okay, I don't agree with her on a lot of stuff. That's why I like talking to her. What's that?
I don't think it was
there
that.
it is.
It was a discussion about if it was most useful, if it was more harmful to children as opposed to using it in older adults. It wasn't saying that it was harmful to children specifically. It was a guest on the show speaking. So it wasn't you even agreeing with any of that.
Okay. Well, there's grave concerns about the mandate in young males in particular. My elderly patients, whatever. I don't want to get into it, but the point is, I was talking to a doctor, and we were discussing the issues, and then there was an attorney. I discussed the issues with him. It all gets taken down. In the setting of Zuckerberg now sort of coming on board with the more Elon Musk-esque view of the world, which I would say is most consistent with the founding fathers' view of the world, which is that free speech is a essential civil liberty to maintain a properly functioning representative government. What do you think of YouTube still lagging behind? How do we get them to come in? They, by the way, have not really answered us. We went to Sky Adams this morning was talking about the re-education camp they want me to go to. Caleb went for me. He went to a re-education program. Second time he's gone. Second time, mind you. And I said, we're going to put it up. I want to put the whole thing up online, what the re-education plan is. Caleb, you want to comment on it?
Caleb, what did you do?
It is the dumbest questions ever. And the worst part is the fact that they expected a licensed physician like Dr. Drew, who's been doing this for double the years that YouTube has existed. They wanted him to answer questions about just random things like some person was on a vlog and the co-host was on the vlog and the guest on the vlog says that she was harmed by vaccines. Does this break our rules or not? And you have to click yes or no for you to get the warning removed from your channel 90 days later.
Wait to put this out.
You just have to say what they want. I have all the questions. I saved them.
It's like
my God, I can't wait. It's incredible.
Look, Drew, I think the best lens to look at this through is the Twitter files for a moment, because when Elon took over Twitter and everyone was going crazy about it, what did we find out? We found out, and I went there and met with him and I met with engineers, and they basically showed me, there's some stuff they can't show you because it deals with people's email addresses and private information, but they basically showed me how the system worked. And the system was literally built to shadow ban. Jack Dorsey, who was the former CEO of Twitter, testified under oath that shadow banning did not exist. And I think the way he was able to get through that without, perjuring himself, not that it even matters at these hearings, is that shadow banning, I guess, is not a technical word. It's the idea that you're putting out information and it's being depressed algorithmically, but there's probably various ways you could interpret the word itself. But I saw the way they would tag accounts. And if Drew communicated with Dave Rubin and Rubin communicated with Joe Rogan, then that network could sort of be depressed. Or if you said this about, it was obviously largely about COVID, but it was also about election, but it was about gender and sexuality and all of these things. There was an unbelievably complex system with labels and color-coded things and all kinds of crazy things that the system was built on. So now we find out years ago that, okay, this is going on at Twitter. Isn't it interesting that there has not been the YouTube files? Isn't it interesting that there has not been the Facebook files? Now, we know a little bit more about Facebook because Zuckerberg has now come out, and he was on Rogan last week, basically. It was interesting because I can't quite say it was a mea culpa with him. He never apologized nor really took any of the blame. He just said, people were calling us and yelling at us, and I always wanted to be a little more for free speech. I don't think he's been as bad as Jack Dorsey. I've seen him in the congressional hearings, and he was at least publicly, I think, trying a little bit more so to defend the right principles of free speech and the First Amendment. However, what I need out of Zuckerberg right now, if you're trying to lead us into the metaverse where everyone's going to strap on that helmet and be in your three-dimensional world, how about a real apology? And you know what? If you don't want to throw anyone at your company under the bus for silencing people, well, if what you said on Rogan is true, that people from the government were calling you, yelling at you to silence people over COVID stuff, How about you just tell us who they were? Who were these people in the US government? Because those people should be in trouble, right? We don't even have to point the finger back at you, Zuckerberg. You're under a tremendous amount of pressure and you have a lot of things to do during the day, so you can kick the can if you want, but who were the people at the government doing this? By the way, Jim Jordan released a report about a year ago that we know that that is all true. Now, as it pertains to YouTube, again, there's been no YouTube files. So if you think that Elon got into Twitter, he fired half the workforce. I think it was about 3,000 people. Everyone was like, oh my God, Twitter's not going to work. It's actually much more elegant and works way better now. And it's been much more respectful of free speech. The question at YouTube that they have to grapple with, I suppose, as we go through this cultural change, how many people work there that are still messing with the algorithm? Who's even in charge? Are there, because the algorithm is constantly being reinvented, basically, right? So you have programmers that put an algorithm in, and you need an algorithm because it has to order information somehow so that when you search, it can't just spit everything out at once. It has to be ordered in something. Is it a new video? Is it going viral already? Does it have a lot of likes? Does this person have a lot of subscribers? Algorithms, people think the word algorithm is bad, but no, you need something to order information to some extent. But the question is, how damaged is the algorithm? And then the real question as it pertains to your video is, okay, was it the system and AI and the algorithm that took your video down? Or was it a person that is literally paid to watch a channel like Dr. Drew that's still doing it? And if that person is there doing it, under what directive are they? We know nothing about YouTube, which of course is why you and I are on Rumble. It's why I started Locals. And look, I'm still on YouTube, and I think we want to keep nudging them in the right direction. But I don't trust them.
No. Yeah, it's interesting. Elon retweeted my stuff a couple of times, and one time he tagged the CEO of YouTube. So I assume he saw that. So if there is not some soul searching amongst the upper management, there's a problem here, and it's cultural, and it's ideological, and it's not about allowing free speech. And people that want to make the argument that, they can do whatever they want, free speech is strictly applies to the government, which is true. They can do whatever they want. That is absolutely true. But there is an ethical obligation, I think, of all Americans to maintain founding principles upon which we are set.
Yes, I'm glad you made that distinction because people do get a little lost in the weeds or confused here. Well, first off, there is some governmental issue here because we know the government was putting pressure on these companies. So there is actually a First Amendment element to this. But even if you remove that for a moment, the question really that you're bringing up is there an ethical duty of a platform to allow free speech? And I would largely say yes, or at least they have to be transparent about their rules. That's the thing. Every internet site, social media or otherwise, has a terms of service. And if you break the terms of service, you can't be on their site. By the way, I'm completely fine with that. Anyone that has a business, you can set the terms of your business, just like you set the terms in your own home. If someone walks into my house and says a bunch of horrible things to me, you can't be in my house anymore. That's how it works. So I would apply that same rule to a business. The issue is, there's also a legal issue regarding Section 230 because the difference between a platform and a publisher, like Daily Wire, is responsible for what Ben Shapiro might say on air.
I think 230 is why they're sort of paralyzed. I think they're worried that they're going to run amok of that.
Well, 230 is very complex because basically it's allowing people to say more things. The protections that big tech gets on 230 are that they're not going to be sued basically for what is put on their platforms. Now, in some sense, you do want that, right? Because if someone puts up something horrible on Twitter or on YouTube or whatever, think of the most horrible thing you can think of. Someone puts it up there. You don't want Twitter or YouTube to be sued for that because then it will be incumbent on them to censor more people. And that's where censorship will be out of control. So in some sense, you want them to have the legal protection. So if you took 230 away, they would have to do more censoring. Now, on the other hand, if they're doing that censoring secretively, so you don't know what you did wrong in that video. They sent your guy to the re-education camp. You're still not sure what you did. They demonetize my videos. Often we have no idea why. I don't get deleted as much as I used to. And I think what happens also is when you hit a certain point, eventually they start realizing you're more of a headache to deal with, because then Elon retweets you and they're like, boy, we better stop messing with Dr. Drew because it's starting to butterfly affect this whole thing. But anyway, as it pertains to the legal, there's a philosophical premise of free speech. There's a legal definition of the First Amendment. And then there's the legal complexities of 230 and what do certain protections do? And if you remove those protections, are you just actually accidentally, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So you remove the protections, and then next thing you know, Facebook is delaying posts. You can't post anything in real time because they've got to fact check it first. And do you trust their fact checkers or anything else? So it's extremely, extremely complex.
Yeah, you said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. One of the great lessons, I learned so many lessons from COVID that were just extraordinary. One was that social evil is always done in the name of good, always.
The Nazis thought they were the good guys.
It's always the self-righteous. Absolutely. And those of you, I say this all the time, those of you that were yelling at your neighbors for having barbecues or were, telling people to put their masks on, whatever it might be, if you were aggressive with that, you need to look at yourself, because you would be a true believer in any circumstance, including 1932 Germany. You would have been a prison guard. That's who you would have been. And you need to know that about yourself so you can watch yourself. There's a book called The True Believer. Have you ever read this book?
I haven't, but I think we did discuss it once.
Yeah, it gets into the characteristics of the people that fall for mass formation. It's really interesting. I thought we were done with that during the 20th century, but it turns out, nope, humans are never done with that. The other thing is, you mentioned Newsom apologizing or having some sort of mea culpa, I think it was the word you used. I look for opportunities to apologize as often as I can. I think it's very healing for people. I think we should all be apologizing what we got wrong. And if somebody brings it up to us, you know what? I'm sorry. I got that wrong. It will not happen again. That all of us need to do that. My classic apology was to Naomi Wolf. Did you know about this story, David?
I don't know about the apology. I know Naomi, but I'm not sure about the...
She a couple times on my show was talking about menstrual irregularities coming from the vaccine being reported, and they had data on it. And I was like, Naomi, menstrual irregularities in women, it just... wind blows the wrong way. I mean, come on now. And I thought, and then all the evidence started coming in, and I thought, oh my God, not only was I dismissive of my friend's data, it was so sexist to go, no big deal, menses are irregular. Why you were, it was egregious, and I apologize. I apologize to her every time I see her, and I'll look for other opportunities to apologize. For this, in this case, I was dismissive and sexist, profoundly.
Well, look, Drew, what you're talking about really is having a little humility in the face of the unknown, right? I mean, I grant everybody a very long leash at that beginning period of COVID and the 2 weeks or the 15 days to slow the spread or whatever. And then a lot of people, I'm very proud to say that I woke up very quickly after that. But everyone gets there on their own pace, and it's tough sometimes when you wake up and you still see people in that slumber. That's very tough. But you're talking about humility. You're saying, boy, there were things that I didn't understand, that I may have wronged or given the wrong information or treated or ignored this person and kept looking over there or whatever it might be. Yep. And a scientist, you're a man of science, right? A scientist should have humility beyond anything else, right? Like that should be the number one, I would say skepticism probably, which we also didn't have a lot of that, but skepticism and humility probably are the underpinnings that would lead someone to being a great scientist. Do you think that Albert Einstein would just hear something from somebody and then repeat it as if it was fact, or would he be skeptical? Would he be, Albert Einstein, so much of his writing is his humility in the face of the ever-expansive universe. So how about we take some lessons for that from him, let's say, instead of maybe Peter Hotez or what's her name? Who's the woman that they put on CNN all the time, who they're still putting up now? Leanna Wen or something?
Wen? Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
She's at Newsom level for me.
Well, Joseph Fryman, who did the famous analysis of the Pfizer original data, pointed out to me how everyone had maintained an irrational certitude. Certitude is irrational, and that the position, as you're describing here, David, is rational uncertainty, objectivity and rational uncertainty, skepticism. All that is how you ascend to an approximation of reality. That's it. It's rational, careful uncertainty.
And by the way, it's kind of the easiest thing to do to say, I don't know everything about everything. You know, I remember when Joe Biden gave that speech in June of 21, where he said, if you get the vax, you will not get nor transmit COVID. And I watched it live. And I remember thinking, there's just no way he knows this. You're telling me this thing was just rushed out and they've done enough to, like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a man of science like you are, right? I learn from people and I read, but that's not my area of expertise. But why is it that I was willing to hear that and still be skeptical? I don't know. Maybe I'm wired that way, whatever it might be. But all of these people, you know, that video that's gone very viral of Rachel Maddow after that, you remember that one, where she gives the most impassioned explanation, basically repeating everything that Biden said. And she had no idea what she's talking about. Why did Rachel Maddow, who gets paid about cool $20 million a year to sit in that seat over on MSNBC, why is it that she swallowed the standard line and I did not? Well, I think it's worth thinking about.
The more concerning thing for us, and Caleb put it up here, was that her certitude, those words you're talking about, are still up on YouTube. That is not misinformation. That's not disinformation. But two clinicians talking about concerns about 22-year-old males and myocarditis, that's misinformation. It's such a case in point of how disgusting it is that anyone feels that they can stand above and decide what is truth and what is not.
Drew, I'd be more than happy to be quiet for a little bit if you want to play it, but if you're just going to put the video up there, look at her body language too. She's so damn sure. Look at the way she's swinging her hands. This is what AOC does with everything when she's talking about climate change.
The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
Lie.
It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people.
Yes, it can.
Misinformation and disinformation.
I got to mute that before we get a misinformation strike again.
We would get that for calling her misinformation. We would get it not for playing her video, but for calling her misinformation, right? That would be the strike.
Honestly, who knows? Honestly, who knows? Because that is actual disinformation that is still right there on YouTube. That's the example that we posted and showed YouTube. Like, why is this allowed? She is not a medical professional. There are no medical professionals on screen. And yet over on our show, there are two physicians on screen. Who at YouTube has any of the qualifications at all to judge what either of the physicians are saying, if it's correct or not? There is no physicians on their moderation team.
Dave, this is Caleb after re-education camp. He's been re-educated, and this is him now. You should have heard it before.
You should have seen that guy yesterday.
Well, listen, you've been good enough to and very generous with your time. I want to give you a chance to get out of here. What's coming up? What do you want people to look for? Tell us where we should go to find more Dave Rubin.
Oh, well, the next thing, Drew, I'm going to take this coaster and I'm going to take this tape and I'm going to build a water filtration system and I'm going to send it to you over there just in case you need some help. RubinReport.com.
There it is. Don't burn this country.
That's the book.
And that's the book. And he could not have been more prescient with that title because they went ahead and did it. And he didn't say they would necessarily light the match, but they created the circumstance for it. Dave, one day I want to talk about your history evolving from a left-leaning individual to a right-leaning individual, because it's not told enough. It's such and I know Larry Elder was at the center of that transition, but it's such an interesting thing to examine because I like seeing people evolve and change their minds and apologize. I mean, that's what the moment is called for, is for people to do better, get better, be more connected to reality, and lead one another. Be humble.
I transitioned before it was cool, Drew. I heard a rumor that you might make a guest appearance on the Rubin Report tomorrow with Adam Carolla.
It's up to the host of the show. I will be here setting up his camera so I can easily jump on. He's for people that don't know, he lives in Malibu. And he got burned. His house is fortunately still standing, but they're not allowed back in. So his girlfriend is staying with us. So we have Corolla in the house, literally, with us. And he called me and said, "Hey, Dave suggested using your system." I said, "Great, let's do it." And then I suggested a twofer. I think he and I sitting side by side will be very interesting.
Well, now I definitely have to have you on because I want to hear about the love line life that you people are living, you two under a roof together. It's incredible.
It's It's sensational. You can't imagine how exciting it is. So, all right, Dave, thanks. I'll see you tomorrow morning.
All right, see you in the morning.
All right, done and done. For the rest of you, let's take a look at what's coming up for us. We have on Tuesday, calling out today, of course. Susan's got a great show coming up. I'm going to help him out with that. I'll be on.
Yeah, 3 o'clock. Pacific Standard Time.
Salty Cracker next week. Some TBDs coming up. The schedule's moving around. I'm going to do Gutfeld next week. Is that next week? Week after? No, that's the Gutfeld week, the 28th week, I think. McCullough coming in. Beatrice Rosen's going to be a really interesting interview. She's in February. We got a lot of great guests lined up, but my schedule's been a little bit wonky. As you see, we're doing this one early, and we're moving things around a little bit, so we apologize for that.
And if anybody wants to know, we are going to have a granddaughter, hopefully this weekend.
That's part of what's messing with our schedule.
Better happen.
We're trying to stay
poke her head out. She's got to come out to
lean
this
and
world. She's hanging on for dear life. She doesn't want to see California.
Lean loose for that. Here's somebody who doesn't like Dave Rubin. Rom Space Night. Sorry about that. And then Your Daddy Loves Him the Best.
Oh, I should have been talking about my show. We're doing a prediction show with 3 psychic mediums. We're going to talk about what they see spiritually coming for everybody. So join us. I'm looking at the restream. I don't see anything worthy needs comment there. I appreciate what you guys are saying. Of Rachel Mad Cow. Keeping going back. Anything? Okay, guys, give me a second to look at all your stuff. Red dye now recalled. That is the RFK effect. The people talk about the Trump effect. That is the RFK effect. What's up, Caleb?
Real quick, I want to do a real quick fact check because Dave had brought up, he said that it would be great if YouTube would actually show us the timestamps and the reasons why they would knock videos off. They actually did recently start doing that, and I did highlight, they showed us the exact timestamps, and I highlighted how ridiculous those were. So, and those are in those video clips that you posted on Twitter. The exact time, there's nothing in there that should have gotten it kicked off anyway. But it's good they're doing that.
That is what's missing. That is that we appreciate the time span. Listen, like Caleb put in his email to YouTube, I'm delighted to help them come along. I'm delighted to be a part of their world. I'm delighted to understand what their issues are and maybe be a supporter of their transition, their move into a more free speech world. I don't know. But whatever it is, we come with an open heart and an open mind, and we want to be a part of this humbly getting better for everybody. And free speech is always at the core of that. That has become strangely my great crucible, a hill upon which I'm willing to die right now. And I never imagined even needing to do that, but here we are. Okay, so we are with you. Let me check my schedule on Tuesday at 3 o'clock. In the meantime, Adam and I will be appearing on Dave Rubin's show, I guess, tomorrow. So we'll see you there. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.